Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. This is a new contemporary fiction novel that came out. Angela Flournoy wrote The Turner House, which came out in like 2016. No, maybe before 2016, something along around then. And I think this is only her second novel. So she is someone who I read The Turner House when it came out, and I liked the book. And she was definitely like one of those writers where I was like, I'm very intrigued to see what comes out of her like next. It was like a strong debut that I was like, this is someone I want to keep an eye out on. And so when it was announced that this was coming out, I like immediately put a hold on my library, and then it's been longlisted and potentially shortlisted for the National Book Award. So this was definitely one that I was like, yeah, I want to read it as soon as I can. And I'm glad I did. So like I said, this is a contemporary fiction book, and you are following like 4 to 5 different characters who are all friends. There's Desiree and Danielle, who are sisters whose mom passed away when they were young, and their dad wasn't really in their lives. And so they were raised by their maternal grandfather, and the story begins with him passing away. There is some sort of like conflict that is happening between Desiree and Danielle because they don't really talk very much. And after the grandfather passes away, they basically stop talking to each other for reasons that you know about at the beginning of the book. There is January, who you know is in a serious relationship with what she says is a good man, but she feels pretty ambivalent about the relationship. Like she's not sure how she feels about him, if she actually loves him or if she's just with him because he's good. And then she finds out that she is pregnant. There's Monique, who is a librarian who has a blog post that ends up going viral. And then there is Nakia, who is working at a restaurant, who like comes from an upper middle class family, and like her family is constantly like trying to figure out why she's just like struggling working in the restaurant world as opposed to doing something like better with her life. And so you are just like following these women, these young women from like their early 20s through to about midlife, just seeing how things change and evolve within each individual character's life, as well as within their friendships and relationships, and how things change and how different events impact how just like everything about their like small world as well as within like the larger context of what's going on in the world. So there are a lot of things about this book that I really enjoyed. I feel like this is a period of time that I like personally don't feel like I've read a lot of books taking place and following a group of friends as they go from their like 20s post-college life through like that midlife, with all of them going through various situations and struggles and just like the various journeys that life can take you in when you are in that age range. Like some of them get married, some of them become moms, some of them have careers that are really strong, and some of them don't. And you see sort of like how their relationships kind of evolve and change and move while like their personal situations change and move, which I feel like is very realistic to what growing up is like, especially if you are someone who has like long-term friends, friends that you've been lucky enough to be friends with over multiple decades. I think it's very obvious that like those relationships change over time, especially if your like path in life takes different routes and stuff like that. Like I have friends who I've been friends with since like high school, who like got married straight out of college and started having kids, whereas I like just got married and just started having kids, while like those friends, their kids are like about to start high school. And so like we've been at like different stages of life at different times, and so our relationships have had to change and evolve to accommodate those things. And so I think that that is kind of like the strongest aspect of this book, like looking at different, specifically Black women's lives over the course. I think this book specifically takes place between like 2010-ish to through the 2020s, so it's taking place in like the recent history of life. And so like I felt like I could very much see like how these women's lives were impacted by the specific things that were happening in the real world. And like it's so those characters feel like very real, very grounded. These friendships felt like real friendships, and like things that I've seen either in my own life or in like the periphery and stuff like that. But I do feel like this book never really fully came together for me personally. Like in the end, I gave this a 3.5 stars because I think that again, there's a lot of really interesting ideas and themes that are being explored throughout this book, but it never really felt fully cohesive for me personally. Each character's like point of view felt like it could have been its own book and its own fully fleshed out story. There are certain characters that are more developed than other ones. Like you find out a lot about Danielle and Desiree, because the story also like starts with like their storyline, and there's a lot more detail about like their family history, and you know, because it's like the two sisters eventually both get perspectives in the book. It just feels like that world is more fleshed out, and it feels like that could have been just like an entire story in and of itself, talking about their family and their like sisterly relationship and stuff like that, and like the friendship stuff felt like a completely different point of view. I think Monique gets the least amount of like POV pages, and so she as a character just feels like the least fleshed out, and also a lot of her pages are just the blog post that went viral. So you like, and the blog post is about like something that specifically happened to her at her job. So you are learning about her to a certain degree, but it doesn't feel the same. And so she feels like a very like shallow character. Like it felt like there should have been more going on with Monique, but there wasn't really like time or space given to her. And like Nakia's side of things feels like very, very different. Like her sections of the book are a lot more about like race and class. It also like talks a lot about the protests that were happening in the late 2010s into the 2020s. And so they feel a little bit more poignant in the sense of like it's talking about like some of the big issues that were happening during that time period. Whereas, you know, like the Desiree and Danielle stuff felt more just about like a sister relationship story and how that was impacting their lives and stuff like that. This book is also told in a non-linear way, so you are jumping back and forth in time as you are also jumping perspective. So you see like something happening, you jump back and see from a different friend's perspective, and you get like little pieces here and there about their lives, and then things kind of come together. So I saw someone else describe this book as being kind of like a patchwork quilt, which I think is just like a very apt way to talk about this book, because that is really what it feels like. Like there are all these different pieces that are all very different from each other that create this one big book. And so, but I'm not fully sure if the cohesiveness is really there. So yeah, overall, I do think that this is a good book. Again, I rated it at 3.5 stars. I think that this is one that will be very like hit or miss with people, just depending on like what you want out of novels and the style of writing that you like. And I know that's always just like kind of true, but I felt like with this one, this is a book that I finished and I was like, yeah, I like this. I don't think it's fully like the type of book that I personally fall in love with, but I can 100% see a lot of other people just really, really loving this book, as they should, because I do think that this is a really strong novel. There are some really great things that are being explored over the course of this book that I thought were really great. So yeah, overall, I would recommend this book. I do think it's worth checking out, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be 100% for like the broad audiences. So yeah, that's everything I have to talk about today. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read The Wilderness, what your thoughts were on it, or if you have any questions about the book, feel free to leave that down in the comment section as well. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.